Valley in Southern Province is one of the worst hit regions by climate change in Zambia. The effects of climate change have negatively impacted rural development in this region, which is one of the most productive areas for livestock, crops, and wild fruits. To avert the harsh effects of climate change, agricultural stakeholders developed sustainable and appropriate projects for livestock, crops, and wild fruits through a collaborative research project in Southern Province. Funded by the UK Global Challenges Research Fund and Musika Development Initiatives, the project looked at food security, strategic management, and work plan to help support the residents put in place adaptation and mitigation measures and preserve indigenous food resources.
This project has national partners and also international partners. The international partners, we have Cardiff University in UK, and within Zambia we have a consortium, Climate Change Consortium, with the membership of Musika Development Initiative Limited, the University of Zambia, and within the University of Zambia we have the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies. We have also the School of Veterinary Medicine. We have also the School of Public Health participating. The other third partner within the Climate Change Consortium is a private consulting firm, PRIS 365. We also have the Center for Health Metrics and Evaluations. So those are the players who are involved. And this project, the title of the project in a nutshell is actually developing an effective food system management strategy with a focus on indigenous food genetic resources, livestock, crops, cultivated crops, wild fruits, wild vegetables, wild tubers. So that is essentially the focus. Of course, we are looking at in the context of climate change within the Gwembe Valley.
The study by a consortium of researchers was also meant to identify the gaps in literature with respect to indigenous livestock, crops, and wild food resources in Gwembe Valley.
Basically, we are looking at the food systems in the Gwembe Valley, and part of those food systems is the livestock. We are more interested in the indigenous livestock, which comprise the cattle, the goat, the poultry, pigs, and basically we believe that the indigenous livestock holds the answer to sustainable agriculture in that part of Zambia because of climatic changes which occur frequently. As you know, or as you are aware, the Zambezi Valley is one of those areas in Zambia which receives very little rainfall, and there is need to promote the indigenous livestock, which apparently has sustained those communities over centuries.
PRIS 365 is part of the Climate Change Consortium, which is implementing this project, and we are focusing on looking at the crop sector. As you are aware, we are really looking at how do we preserve our indigenous resources, and what we see as a challenge in the crop sector is that, first of all, crop diversity is reducing. If we look at our indigenous crops that are cultivated, we see that there's more a move towards cultivating these hybrid varieties rather than advancing our own varieties. Further, we also see that there is no deliberate effort on a large scale to multiply our indigenous seeds. As you are aware, of course we have the hybrid seed, but in terms of the indigenous seed, I think there needs to be more effort to both multiply the seed as well as commercialize it. But also when we commercialize these seeds, we have to make sure that there is a human rights approach in terms of access for the indigenous communities. So what we don't want is a case where these seeds are multiplied and commercialized, but the indigenous communities have no access. And so that is what we are hoping to promote as well in this project, to make sure that once we have seed multiplication for indigenous crops, this is also then advanced to make sure that the indigenous communities actually have access.
This project culminated into the validation workshop for the research findings in Lusaka from 6th October to 7th October 2021. Stakeholders from the Cardiff University in the United Kingdom attended the workshop virtually, while Musika and other stakeholders were physically present.
As you may be aware, colleagues, Gwembe is one of the districts in this country that gets badly affected when it comes to weather vagaries. If you recall, in the season 2018 to 19, Gwembe was badly affected, but worse than any other district in Southern Province. They lost more than 50% of their crops, but survived because of small ruminants like goats, village chickens, mention them, that made Gwembe survive that particular time. Then one questions himself or herself from a policy point of view, why should we keep on emphasizing on maize, maize, and maize? When in actual fact, because of weather conditions, the solutions could be those goats, could be those village chickens, could be other, legumes that are critical for the survival of people in Gwembe and similar institutions, similar districts in Zambia.
There is need for each one of us to find ways on how we can mitigate its effects. And the work that is going to take place for the next 2 days really is going to answer this particular question. And I want you also to pay particular attention that many are the times that our local varieties or our local breeds have been looked at as inferior. And the motivation that made us as Musika to participate is to try and find out and bring the evidence to this particular debate that is going on.
During the workshop, farmers from Southern Province took turns in presenting what they had learned and their expectations.
Resources discussion. We had yesterday of my fellow farmers. I say my fellow farmers because I'm also a farmer.
Basimaseko muri balimi abaro mbalimi tomagoleha bagali kisigiri ichakulanganya ilimwa ayonse.
Yeah, so our two farmers, Mr. Danta Nule, who is from Senior Chief Gwembe.
The introduction of weed killers actually has affected most of the farmers because most of the indigenous seeds are destroyed because of these chemicals. There are so many hybrid seeds that are being introduced in the district. Once the indigenous seed or food disappears, the yet to come generation will not find them.
Co-developing food systems management strategies to enhance community resilience in the face of climate change is another vital issue being addressed.
The traditional food systems have been neglected, and that is where we are trying to focus on this project. The traditional food resources are vital in terms of the nutrition as well as medicinal. So as we know that there is an increase in non-communicable diseases And such information regarding the indigenous food resources can play a huge role in trying to alleviate some of these conditions. So for our project, what we have been looking at is we would like to find out in the Gwembe Valley the status of these indigenous food resources.
The challenges that we have observed over the years is that most of our indigenous livestock is slowly disappearing due to a number of activities that are happening, especially the crossbreeding, because we've been told that the exotic livestock breeds are the best, because when you have them, they'll give you an offtake which is quite high in terms of the meat production, and yet these exotic breeds cannot be sustained in that part of the country. And that's why we have decided that we try and encourage the rearing of these indigenous breeds, which we know that can sustain those communities.
Having conducted the workshop, what next for the project?
To why local people do not want to consume our own foods. This is also a big problem in the sector that we're looking at, because what we've seen is there's more preference and more movement towards consuming exotic things. Even if we look at the diet of many Zambians want to eat fast food. And this has led to some of the challenges that we are seeing in terms of communicable diseases in the country. So the cost for the country is actually really high. What we want to be able to do is to be able to promote the consumption and the preference by our local people, both in the rural areas and in the urban areas, to actually consume indigenous products and indigenous crops.
Thank you very much for all the information that has been given to us. The people are coming from Gwembe Valley. We want to thank Musika and also Cardiff University and all other organizations. Those that have heard our cry because of the problems that we are facing in the valley due to the climate changes. We are very grateful. This is what we are requesting now, all that we have learned here. We request that whatever has been happening here should not end here, but should be replicated somewhere else. And as we are coming from the valley, please, I beg, let us go and report and inform the brothers and sisters we left down there.
If we get some funding, we can really do the genetic profiling for us to know exactly what percentage of the livestock in the Gwembe Valley is really pure Tonga breed, and how do we conserve that. So from that point, that is already indicating our next steps. We will develop this food security strategy. We have just ended the 3 days conference where we were sharing these results to various stakeholders, including the farmers themselves, and the headmen and the headwomen attended this conference, and various organizations. We were trying to disseminate, to share the findings, and we got very good feedback, and would like really to appreciate all the participants. We are going to do the write-up, integrate that feedback, and still send back the reports to the stakeholders for validation. And after that, we are going to do a publication to publicize the strategy. Of course, within the strategy, there is a framework that we are proposing for community-based food systems, which various actors, the private sector the public sector, the civil society, and the community themselves, we should have a common place to ensure that we are productively contributing towards creating resilience and achieving food security in the era of this climate change.
This project that contributes to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals on reducing poverty, hunger, and creation of jobs and economic growth will further grow and strengthen partnerships at local and international levels towards creating resilience of vulnerable communities to effects of climate change.